Hey. Good morning. Good morning, West. Good morning, East. Good morning. It's Monday. Good morning. Man, I am sorry that you had to see that mustache. What the? That thing was nothing but trouble, man. That thing looked like a 70s Western bad movie actor or something. That thing dang near cost me my marriage. My wife hated that thing, hence it's gone. I love my wife, and she said shave. I got a couple months out of that, though. I did my best. I got a little bit out of that. I meant what I said. I've seen that a few times now. Some of you have seen it. Sorry if you've seen it, but I meant what I said that day, and I didn't even think about it. As we were making that film some time ago, it all kind of came together, and I just rambled, and then he pieced it together. But ever since after I said that, and I lived into that for a while, I meant what I said. I desperately want us as a community at the corner of Citrus and Alosta to be a group of people that cannot look the other way, that would be so gripped by the things that concern us here, locally, globally, and so on. But as we enter into Local and Global Engagement Week, I want us to be a community of believers that cannot look the other way. I'm not even entirely sure. If I were really to impress you, I'd probably fail, because I'm not even entirely sure what I mean by that necessarily. But I think there's something. I think it's a capacity in us that makes sure that we look at people and situations with a lens of love and mercy and real passion to care in some small way. A couple years ago, we were on vacation, and outside of the gate of the condo that we were staying in was a guy that I met named Nelson. And Nelson was an older person experiencing homelessness, and he was just a few feet from where we walked by every day. And I'm not good at this, by the way. I would be a hypocrite if I told you I'm the guy that gives $1 to every on the corner. I'm a hypocrite, but I do my best. And in this case, I ended up making friends with Nelson. And we would hang out almost every night, and we talked. I don't think my family knows this. My daughter's looking at me right now. I don't think my family knows that I actually snuck him in and gave him a shower. I didn't give him a shower. I let him take a shower. Be careful. I let him take a shower in our apartment a number of times that week. I don't know if my family knows that, but no harm, no foul. And at the end of our time together, Nelson said something to the effect of, "Matt, thanks for looking over at me that day. Thanks for looking over at me that very first day that you and I made a connection. I've been back since, and I've looked for Nelson, and I found him the second year, and we talked some more and so on. I haven't seen him since." But I think there's something in this idea of looking, making sure that we are trying to take a look at all people. I think when we do that, we stop haggling over the difference between social justice and evangelism, because both are key to the whole gospel. I think we haggle over, especially this week. I hope that we'll stop haggling over, are there greater needs locally or globally? Trust me, friends. Walk 3 blocks from here. Trust me, friends. Turn on the TV and see what's happening in Myanmar. And we know for a fact that there are tremendous needs in both. And I intend to challenge us as a community to make sure that we are relentless in figuring out what that looks like, figuring out what we might do. Better yet, why we ought to be paying attention to those kinds of things. I think as we do our best to pay attention to important issues, we will choose to live at the corner of the Great Command and the Great Commission. The Great Command says what? Remember, the Great Command is what? It's not a test. We can't talk to each other. The Great Command says, love your neighbor. The Great Commission says, make sure that everyone gets a chance to hear, no matter how far away they are, no matter how easy they are to get to or not, that everybody gets a chance to hear the hope and claims of Christ. And I think if we live at the corner of the Great Command and the Great Commission, we will pay attention to our neighbors and those to the uttermost part of the earth. I believe that we have the responsibility to understand that every soul is made in the image of God and is therefore our kingdom neighbor and deserves respect and does not deserve neither the cruelty nor the grace that we are so often ready to give to somebody. I desperately pray for that as a community. Here's where I want to go today. I have time. Here's where I want to go today, because it's kind of become clear to me that maybe we need a perspective change. And maybe I'm only talking to myself, and in fact, I am talking to myself to some degree this day as well, I promise you. But I wonder if we need a perspective change. Instead of us maybe begging, that's a strong word, instead of us continually saying to you, what are we going to do to pay attention and meet the global and local ministry needs, maybe we need to break it down a little more simply. Maybe we need to back all the way up to why that matters. Why would I ask you to do something? Why would I ask you to be a body of believers who cannot look the other way, unless I maybe try to explain to you how I see that to be core to the gospel? And it boils down to this pretty simply. The bottom line is this: if you are a Christian, your life is no longer your own. Period. And I know that's scary maybe. I know that's some of you maybe bit off more. You didn't realize what you were biting off. We'll get to that. But it's clear to me that our lives are no longer our own. It's clear to me that my life is not my own. I don't get to decide to do everything that I want to that makes me happy, because I am now a Christ follower. Those of us who are Christians have to realize that we have been bought with a price, and the one that bought us gets to decide how to use us for His glory and for His name's sake. That's the core of the gospel. When you became a Christian, you decided, you probably used this word, or the youth pastor or whoever probably used this word. You decided to surrender your life, right? That's a big word. Surrender means what? Surrender means to give up. You decided to give up your life, not the hard parts, not the easy parts, not the parts you don't like about yourself, but your whole life. Someone introduced you to the claims of Christ. Somebody in your family, wherever you were, somebody introduced you to what it means to be a Christ follower. But I think maybe that most of us, I'll speak for myself, most of us probably didn't really understand what that looks like. I don't think most of us realized the gravity of what we were being asked to do to really, truly follow King Jesus. I know that I didn't. I'm convinced that most of us didn't count the cost of what it really means. And I tell you this, friends, I'm 4 years old, and I have not mastered it yet in any way, shape, or form. But I'm convinced that following Christ really is not very easy. If you came here for feel better about yourself chapel, maybe the wrong guy. We'll get there. You can. But following Christ is really not very easy, I contend. In fact, let's look at what Jesus said about it in Luke chapter 9. Jesus talking. Then he said to the crowd, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross daily and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it, Matt. But if you give up your life, Matt, for my sake, you will save it." I'm not sure I'm not sure that's the language that most of us put in front of people to try to tell them about the love and hope of Jesus and wanting them in their life. I think we like the "my burden is light, my yoke is easy" stuff a little bit more. And all of that has a place. I don't did to take a pericope out of Scripture. But I'm landed on that today because I think where I'm trying to go to is we didn't count the cost, and therefore it does seem difficult, hard, weird, whatever, to really sell out, to pay attention to different people and so on. It's clear to me now that when Jesus first said to his disciples, "Follow me," and they chose to, remember we have a count of it, they chose to, it was not an invitation to repeat a short prayer and then go back to your cabin at Hume Lake. It wasn't an invitation to walk the aisle in Yuma, Arizona so that Lori Roberts might want to go out on a date with you. I don't think it was for you to raise your hand in a room with everybody close your eyes so nobody sees who's making a commitment. I don't think it was that at all. I think it was a summons to lose their lives according to how the world defines success and happiness. Luke chapter 14 says it this way again, Jesus talking. "So you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything that you own." I'm not the theologian in the building. I'm not the theologian on campus. I'm choosing to read that, and if I'm wrong, Tatiana is much smarter than me. I don't think that means a literally give everything away. So you can relax right there. I don't think it, in fact, I hope not, because I love my motorcycle. So I don't think it's I have to give everything away. But I do think that it is rather scary. I do think kind of the frightening thing about the gospel is that Jesus does at least ask us to be willing, not necessarily to give our stuff away, but to give away the stuff that makes us most happy from a worldly standard. That there's a level of comfort that maybe I don't get to be exactly what I think I should be. Maybe God has a more specific plan for my singular life to do something for his kingdom. I think that's what he's asking us to count the cost when he says, you got to give up everything. I don't think that we tell people that all the time. I don't think, and I'm careful, man, get myself into, we have seeker-friendly churches, and I love that. I want people to become Christ followers, but I don't think that we tell people up front sometimes the real cost or the gravity, and maybe with good intentions, right? What person wants to walk into a church and they're there for 5 minutes and they're told to give up their life? I understand that there's nuance, and I understand that the beauty of the gospel is big. The love of Christ is huge, and we talk about that. But I do think there's some consequences to that, frankly. I'm concerned that we have taken the challenging, life-changing, cut-to-the-bones word of Christ and turned it into some easy-to-digest phrases in the church sometimes. I'm talking to myself this morning when I say we. We need to look at ourselves and our churches and our campus and ask, are we really biblically, personally following Jesus? Everything that you and I want to do, we say this to each other, I hear you and I love you for it. Everything that we do to say we want to change the world or we want to become disciple makers, I think all of those questions depend on how we answer that question. Because it's clear to me now, if we are not all in, if we are not abandoned and available and completely captured by the claims of Christ, not much will change because we are unable to be moved, because we are still our own priority. And I think that holds us back. For some of you, myself included, 54 years old, that's maybe still some pretty radical stuff for some of us. To me, man, that is the stuff that revolutions are made of. We're going to talk about a revolution. I still have a dream. As long as I have breath, I have a dream about a revolution here. Some of you are not Christians, by the way, in this room, and I want you to look me in the eye. Where's the camera for East? Look me in the eye. You are my friend. If you are not a Christian yet on this campus, you are welcome here. You are my friend here, and I respect where you are on the journey. I happen to believe that the gospel makes the most sense. I've looked at a lot of stuff over my years, and I've argued with God in embarrassing ways in front of my family even, and sometimes. But I'm telling you, I believe that it is the way. But if you are not a Christian, you are my friend, and you are here. Some of us are relatively new Christians. Some of you have known Jesus for a long time, and I'm not trying to poke you in the eye too hard, but I want you to know the intense, simple love and hope and grace and sacrifice of the living God is hugely significant and therefore deserves a deep, well-thought-out response. And I would be remiss if I didn't try to point that out to you and to me today. If Jesus was not revolutionary, if Jesus, which is part of the reason why I am a Christ follower today, and if you're not, I'd love to talk to you about how I got to where I did. But part of it comes down to this fact that Jesus, don't get mad at the church, or excuse me, don't get mad at Jesus, by the way, for the church. Did I say that right? Anyway, you got it. Jesus, okay, was revolutionary. I believe that Jesus was dangerously different, countercultural, and big in his mission and vision and purpose and love. I don't think if that's not who Jesus was, I don't think I would want to follow him. I think I couldn't ask you to follow him. But, and here's the but If we do, and if we have decided to put our trust and hope in him, we know that we have a master that demands radical, revolutionary obedience. Obedience. And that's not a knock on the head. That's not of if you messed up. You don't want to know the list of stuff that I deal with still, okay? But I'm telling you, we are doing our best because as Christ followers, he does deserve obedience to the best that we can. We simply cannot spend our lives putting a spin on the American dream, putting a Christian spin on the American dream. There is just too much at stake. If we are going to live, and many of you do, I contend I have one of the best jobs on the planet. And many of you are in my office. I watch you. I watch the team in the Center for Student Action. I listen to the Salty. I work my way around and I hear students that so desperately want to do big, life-changing things for the kingdom. If we're going to live for the trafficked people of the world, for the hungry and the thirsty, for those 1.3 billion souls who have no access to the gospel through no fault of their own around the world, for those systematically marginalized all around the world, it will mean revolutionary, radical change in our lives, in our churches, and I'll say it in front of all of us, and on our campus. Here's the good news. I'll stop picking on you for a second. Find some good news. I have. The good news is this. This doesn't have to be scary. This doesn't have to frighten us entirely, because get this, the clear message of the gospel, the clear message of Christ is that the message is love and mercy and justice and sacrifice for others. Listen to John 4:8 and get the last three words. 1 John 4:8 says this, "But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love." I'm not a math major, Lord knows, but it's a simple equation, is it not? God is love. And if God is love, I can believe that I can trust in him, and I can trust that giving my life to him and making sacrifices so that I can act on what I believe is okay. I can rest assured that the living God who knows everything about me only wants the best for me. So I'm asking you to sell your stuff. I'm freaking you out there, but to me, it comes down to this idea that it gives me great hope and courage that God only wants the best for me. He wants to help me find that balance between fear and love in my life and beyond. So if we really are able, as we consider local and global engagement week and where we're going, if we really are able to consider in a new way what it means to count the cost for following Jesus, we land on some version of this. In my pea brain, I land on some version of this. We need to live our lives for his name's sake and use our lives for the advancement of God's work around the world and around the corner, locally and globally. I contend that to give up your life, as many of us have said we want to give up your life is to put your faith in Jesus and actually do some things for the advancement of his kingdom and his people. To actually look for a while and stare for a while at some situations. I'm thinking of writing, what did Bob Goff write Love Does? I'm thinking of writing Love Stares. No, that's creepy. I'm not going to write that book. People would read something wrong into that. Never mind. I'm not going to write Love Stares. I'll come up with something better. But I do think, again, I think there is this call to actually do some things. When I created the Center for Student Action several years ago, I prayed a long time. It was not an easy process. But when I created the Center for Student Action, it really was to help us start acting, to stop talking and start acting on what we say we really believe. because I heard people say it to me for many, many years. I said it for many years. I believe that all people deserve the right. I believe that all, and so on. And for me, for a while, frankly, I'm a little bit frustrated, maybe with the North American church even and so on in my own life. What would it look like if we really believed those things and put some of those things into action? And some of you have heard me read this before, but I camped out on this verse for, honest to goodness, I camped out on this verse for a year and got convicted more week by week by week. And it's James chapter 2, 14 to 17 says this: "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone, Matt? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well, but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do?" So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. My deepest conviction, I wish I could see you better, my deepest conviction for this campus, and I believe that we are doing it. I'm not Mr. Negative Pants up here. We're doing some great things, and I thank God for those of us that are. But I'm not sure we're doing enough, and I can't help but use my time this morning to say it. But my deep conviction is that APU, a God-first university, should have a uniquely sacrificial culture, a deep, Spirit-filled culture of going and sending. I want it to be lore. I have a dream. I want it to be lore and common knowledge that if you come to Azusa Pacific University, you will be asked to do great things for our revolutionary king. I believe that we can, and I believe it is your responsibility. I'll be long gone. I think that we together, it will be your responsibility. I think that we can create our own culture. I think that we can decide what we prioritize. If the Dodgers are great at baseball, sorry about last night, if the Dodgers are known for great baseball, if Las Vegas is known for gambling, if In-N-Out is known for great hamburgers, there you go. First clap of the day is about a hamburger or whatever. Kind of my whole point right there, right? Anyway, okay. I want APU to be known for a culture of going and sending, committed, all in, sinners saved by grace to every corner of Azusa and the world to live and love like Jesus. I want that to define us desperately. And I know that we can do it. I hear you talk. I know you're praying all over this campus. I know you want it. Dream with me. Take some action. I still believe in the responsible revolution. In fact, we have a podcast that we've put together for you to be able to listen to and even chime in. I want some of you to be a part of the Responsible Revolution podcast. I want the Responsible Revolution to be a movement. A movement is worth giving your life for. Regularly doing something that you don't have to do. What would it look like if we had a culture of doing things that we don't actually have to do, choosing people over possessions, action over apathy, challenging the world on what the world views as success and happiness, taking the whole gospel to the whole world? In a sense, today is kind of part one of a very short two-part series, because we are going to be back here next week. Next week is Faith in Action Chapel. And you're going to hear from your peers. You won't hear from me. Maybe a little bit. You won't hear from me, but you will hear from your peers. And we're going to ask you to walk into the Center for Student Action and sign up to live in another country for a season, to help kids with their homework in Azusa, to spend Thanksgiving in Mexico, to live with our beautiful neighbors to the south, to write letters to our government to change policy on food aid, to work on a crisis hotline for women and men being abused and sold, to spend time with an international student, to write notes of encouragement to those on campus who feel marginalized, and much more. But here's your homework. Before next week, before we ask you that question next week, ask some version of this to yourself. I challenge you this week to really consider why you may not be doing some of those things like that already. I'm challenging you this week, and I promise to ask myself this. I ask you, what does being a disciple look like, a disciple of Christ, look like and mean to you? I will ask myself that. Am I really acting, thinking, believing like a committed, transformed disciple of Jesus? I hope I like my answer. Maybe I'll tell you next week. So my logic path is this in 30 seconds. This is my logic path. Try to follow it. I hope it's okay. If you're a Christian, God gets to use your life, period. If God gets to use your life, then he gets to use it to advance his good work because he is love. If God gets to use your life for his sake, you actually have to take some action. To let Jesus into your life as Savior is to have faith in him. And many of us are there. But to let Jesus into your life as Lord, to really surrender your whole life to him, is to take some action for him. In the name of Jesus, Father, I pray that you would help us as a campus to see exactly what we ought to be about for your name's sake. We ask these things in your name. Amen.